Morning all, having a slightly early edition today because of NFP, and there's some interesting stuff happening, and it was a very interesting day yesterday. Right, our disclaimer: we do this for educational purposes only. We're here to share our technical analysis with you. We hope you can take some of what we're doing and learn from it, transfer it to your own charts. We're not here to issue trading signals. Now, I've been very carefully looking at the SPX chart. This is the SPX 15-minute chart, and what I've been looking at here is is this a flag? Now, you might think this is a little bit oversized for a flag, and you would be right relative to this pattern here. But obviously, in the larger context, it could easily be a bull flag. So the question is that what we're looking at? There is something else, and I've not marked it on the 15-minute chart because you can't really see it on the 15-minute chart. And it's possible that we're forming a head and shoulders here. This was a potential head and shoulder neckline. This is the ideal right shoulder high in the 2908 area, which would match well, pretty much the ES high overnight. So you can see where I'm coming from here. We've got a potential two-way inflection point here. I have a third option, which I'll be mentioning as well, but in the short term, this is a possible flag. Flag megaphone, and if this is a megaphone, then it is a flag, almost certainly, just because it is so shallow on the top trend line. So in the short term, we have a small IHS there. It has broken up, although it closed pretty much on the neckline, and this could fail easily, and this would be a Janus flag, head straight back to yesterday's low, and we have a breakup, got a target back in the 2918 area, basically add 5 for the ES numbers. And that's the 61.8% fib for the move down from this high here. And we are on a 15-minute buy signal, which has reached the 50 level, which is a potential resistance level, but is still very much open and quite away from making target. Now, the other side is, and I haven't marked it on this chart yet, is that we may be forming a head and shoulders here. Equally, there is an argument we have already broken down from a double top. That double top, interestingly, would have a target almost exactly at the main rising channel support trend line. Now, this raises a third possibility, and the third possibility is this. I haven't raised the second possibility, but that is basically the head and shoulder possibility here. I don't like that as much as I like the third possibility. The third possibility is that we've broken down from a double top. We are backtesting broken double top support, and we're heading down to this trend line here. Under what circumstances would I expect to see that? I'd expect to see that if the channel was evolving into another pattern. Now, that happens a lot, and there is actually a candidate trend line here. These two highs here against this one here. This is not an ideal rising wedge trend line. I prefer the current channel one, frankly, but you quite often see this happen late in a trend as the channel evolves into something else, as a lot of channels do. And actually, this is a perfectly good trend line compared to many others I have seen. So if we go down and we find support there, that would be in the 2765 area. I've got a bit of resistance. I've got a bit of support down there at ES in the 6870 area. It would be that area. And if we head down there and we find support there and move up, then that changes the target, which is no longer this channel resistance, which is the higher target, moves the target lower to a trend line which is currently in the 2955 area, and obviously would be hit probably in the 2960-65 area. Until this trend line is broken, we are leaning towards seeing a higher high. If this trend line is broken, then we may not see a higher high. Although I'd note that if we get down to this 2864 area, then sit 5 area on SPX, that too is a larger and far better possible head and shoulder neckline. We could then see a bounce, if we see that, up to an ideal high in the 2916 area, in effect a test of the weekly pivot, which is only the weekly pivot for today. So by that stage, I suspect it wouldn't be the weekly pivot. But if we were to see that and fail there, then we could be looking at a head and shoulders here, which could look a lot lower. So that's basically the setup on SPX as I see it. Let's have a look at RUT. Now, RUT, I've got a possible 60-minute buy signal brewing, but I would note that we have broken this trend line here. Now, that's not the end of the world. In fact, actually, Stan was predicting that would break. I would note that this has been very weak. RUT often leads the market, and this is a concern because it may have topped already. We're pretty close to a possible head and shoulder neckline there. That's in the 1630 area, and I've got main trendline support in the 1600 area. Those are the two. We've gone through one support area yesterday. These are the next two, which I was talking about on video a couple of days ago, I think. But This one is very important. This is main trendline support from the 2016 low, and if that breaks, then, well, that's a big break. NDX, well, actually, I'll move on to NQ for that one. So hang on, wait a second. This is where I discover that I haven't actually not quite as prepared as I thought. So give me a sec, I'll just get the chart up. Right, let's have a look at the NQ chart. Coming up now, give it a sec. It always seems slower opening if I've got an audience. That could be subjective. All right. NQ, what's the possible topping setup here? Now, this is something I was talking about in a video a couple of days ago as early signs that we may have topped early. And this is the NQ chart, and this is a very, very high quality potential double top. I've got double top support down in the 74.20 area. If we see a sustained break below 74.20, then that would have a target in the 71.10 area. Now, that's not huge. Not exactly financial crisis size or anything, but it's actually quite a sizable move and would take us down quite a bit, and would likely take us down quite a bit on all the indices. So that's something I'm watching here. If this breaks slightly and rejects, that's fine. Takes us straight back to the previous high. Classic Janus flag setup. If this breaks down hard, then well, 71.10 would be the target for this very, very nice looking potential double top. Right, ES, overnight. We've backtested the monthly pivot. We've not converted that to support so far. Looks like we might be having another try, but I dare say the day is likely to be, well, the morning is likely to be dominated by NFP. And NFP, that's coming out in 33 minutes. And at that stage, we may well get a direction. If it breaks down hard, then I'll be looking for support at this level here, 28.69/70. And that is this potential head and shoulder neckline here. And main channel rising support. If we went straight through that, that would be very bearish, very bearish. So, and would suggest that the high probably was in. If we head straight up from here, then we've just been forming an alternate support trend line on the secondary wedge, and actually potentially all the existing targets are intact, but less certainly than they would have been otherwise, because it could be we're just retesting the high for a fail. We shall see. So anyway, it should be an interesting day, and I would be cautious around NFP because we shall see which way it springs from there. I think there's a significant possibility we're going to see a trend day today. Okay, CL. We've had a bit of a breakdown here. I'm watching this potential rising support, which I've got in about the 74 area now, a bit up from where it was yesterday, because obviously it's rising. If we retest this low, interestingly, then we're going to break this trend line, which is interesting. So, because the obvious next move would have been a retest of the low, but if we retest it, this trend line breaks, and that potentially opens up lower targets. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see lower targets. Ideally, given the speed that oil moves, we can actually see CL test the weekly pivot before it stops being the weekly pivot at the end of today, and it's possible we might even go as low as the monthly pivot, although that probably wouldn't be today. Partially dependent on NFP, maybe. Right. NG, we've got, we're having a bit of a move down from here. We're at 3.185. I think this is an ABC. The obvious target is this trend line here, and that's a perfect match with Stan's 3.1 area. Wasn't yesterday, is today. And it looks as though we may well have started that move. I marked in a very little rising wedge on my 5-minute chart. That looks more convincing, obviously. But and that has broken down. Might see a retest of this high, and that would set up a double top to take us back most of the way back. But we're expecting to see a lower low than yesterday's. The obvious target would be 3.1. If that breaks, then we could see 3.02, which would be a match with the weekly pivot, but probably not the weekly pivot by the time we reached it. Okay, GC. GC has been holding the monthly pivot like a chimp. If DX has turned here, that's still an if, but it probably is turning. And I'll come to that when we get to the DX chart. But if it has turned here, then we're finding support in the monthly pivot because we're about to start the next leg up. If it hasn't turned here, then sooner or later, if we go higher on DX and go towards the full retest of the high, then we're going to see a breakdown below this support level on the monthly pivot. But this is holding like a champ so far. DX looks as though it's turning. The obvious read is that this is going to be heading up from here. The same goes for SI, which has also been holding the monthly pivot like a champ, weekly pivot in this case actually, but the monthly pivot's just below it, and may well be about to start a move up. HG, we have been tested the monthly pivot overnight. Now there's two obvious reads on this. One is that this is double top breaking down with a target in the 2.64 area. The other is that we're forming a bull flag, in which case we've just reached the ideal low for a bull flag channel. I'm leaning towards the channel option as long as monthly pivot holds as support. If that's converted to resistance, then, well, we might be going with the double top option instead. It is a perfectly valid double top. It all depends really what happens at monthly pivot. You quite often see these patterns set up with support or resistance at the monthly pivot or weekly pivot, which is interesting. But I suppose it's a big area, so it's a natural area to turn into support or resistance. Okay, ZB. ZB, I've got a very nice pattern here. Now, it might be that ZB is going to, the NFP is going to completely mess up my pattern. But in the absence of that, I've got 60-minute buy signal here. Very nice support. The obvious next move is we'd really be we've done a little 4, we would do a little 5, make a marginal lower low, and then we would head back to this trend line here, which is currently in the 140.06 area. After that, when it reached it, the obvious read is it would break up. And this would be the start of a pretty sizable rally on ZB, which might only get back to the 143 area or something, but obviously, quite a long distance from where we are now. I'm really liking this pattern. I like this a lot. In fact, I don't like this quite as much as when we had an IHS a couple of months ago and we're breaking up from that, but it's nice. Very nice. Okay, DX. DX. Original rising wedge turned into a larger rising wedge. That has broken down and looks like it's topping out. I'm wondering about a possible retest of this high. That's not that far away. Make the second high of a double top and go down from there. Obviously, it's possible that DX could do the same thing it did last time and just start forming the pattern and then just retest the high and just go straight up from there. If we did that, then we'd be getting pretty close to a retest of this high, and it would probably be a reasonable assumption at that stage that we would go and retest it. That's always a possibility with any turn. This has been a not particularly friendly way of delivering that retest, if this is a retest. Okay, EURUSD, same wedge, inverted, breaking up. Likely bottoming out. USD/JPY, this is interesting. I've got two of these today. Traditionally, channels aren't supposed to overthrow. But I've got two really nice ones here which have overthrown and look as though they might break down. So actually, no, I think one of them has broken down. I think that was on RUT. Let's have a look. Was it on RUT or was it on NDX? I think it was on NQ, but anyway, this is another one. I think this is an overthrow, and I suspect it's going to break down. There's a possible head and shoulders forming here, and I've got rising support in the 113.55 area. Okay, USD CAD. In this falling megaphone, the obvious next target would be megaphone resistance. Pretty good match with the monthly pivot now. In the short term, I've got a 60-minute sell signal fixed. We may well be looking at a retracement. Australian dollar. Australian dollar has retested this low. I think this is the second low of a double bottom, and a weak 60-minute buy signal fixed. And then we made a lower low. And now we've got a full 60-minute buy signal. This is looking higher. Okay, KC. Possible little triangle forming. Expect to see a marginal higher high over this, and then stands looking for a back test, which we may well see. Waiting to see. Stands thinking we may well get back to the monthly pivot. That looks ambitious to me, but maybe. We'll see. I'm not assuming it will get that far. I'm not assuming, actually. It's possible it's just going to break up and not come back, and this was the retracement. But it does look like one wave, and stands looking for one ABC. So we'll see. SB. SB has broken a bit higher. This 60-minute sell signal is still fixed and not likely to be threatened. We're getting pretty close to double bottom resistance. If we see a sustained break over that, then we're looking at a target in the 14 area. Which is very much the obvious next big target on SB. CC, I've got a possible flag forming here, this potential double bottom, but it makes a far better looking flag. If so, we could see a move up into possible flag channel resistance in the 21-25 area, and then a retest of the low. Okay, ZW. ZW, I'm looking at this. could be an IHS, but I think it makes a rather better flag wedge at this rising wedge that is flag at this stage. If so, we would go up to wedge resistance in all probability, which is currently in the 533/4 area. We shall see how that goes. KC, ZC. This is a likely rising wedge. We've hit wedge resistance. The next obvious target would be wedge support. That's currently in the 363 area, and obviously, ultimately, this is likely to resolve down, very possibly into a retest of the low, but possibly just into a back test into the monthly pivot. Okay, soy. Again, another wedge. Again, it's nice. Again, it's probably going to break down. Unlike corn, however, at the time I capped this chart, it was already testing the rising wedge support. So we shall see how that goes. We're already on a 4-hour sell signal, watching and expecting to see at least some retracement, either to the monthly pivot or to the full low retest. I think there's much less of a case for a full low retest, but he's got slightly over the 50% here. This would be an ideal place, a usual place to go back and do a retest, so maybe we are going to see that. We shall see. All right, we're going to stop the recording there.